Zara Mitchell was already running 20 minutes late when she merged onto the FDR Drive at 8:30 on a Tuesday morning, her ancient Honda Civic making concerning noises that suggested it was just as unhappy about this situation as she was. She had overslept because her alarm had not gone off, or more accurately, because she had been so exhausted from working until 3 in the morning that she had slept through her alarm without even registering the sound. She had spent the entire night perfecting the branding presentation for Meridian Industries, the tech startup that could make or break her struggling freelance graphic design career. Landing them as a client would mean steady income for at least 6 months, enough to finally pay off the crushing credit card debt she had accumulated over the past 2 years, while trying to establish herself as an independent designer. Losing this opportunity would mean going back to corporate jobs she hated, back to soul-crushing 9-to-5, positions where her creativity was stifled and her ideas were stolen by managers who took credit for her work. At 27 years old, Zara had been freelancing for 3 years, ever since she had walked away from her last toxic corporate job where her boss had harassed her constantly, and the human resources department had done absolutely nothing to help her. She had been building her portfolio slowly, taking whatever projects she could find, designing logos for startups that usually could not afford to pay much, creating websites for small businesses, doing illustration work for indie publications. The money was inconsistent and often insufficient. Her studio apartment in Washington Heights was tiny, barely 300 square feet with a kitchen the size of a closet and a bathroom where she could touch both walls while sitting on the toilet. But it was hers, paid for with her own money, earned through her own work, and that independence mattered more than comfort or space. The Meridian Industries presentation was supposed to start at 9 o'clock sharp at their offices in the financial district, which meant Zara needed to be there by 8:45 at the latest to set up her laptop, test the projector connections, review her notes one final time, and mentally prepare herself to pitch to the 3 founders who would decide her financial future. But the universe seemed determined to work against her today. First, her shower had run cold after 2 minutes because the building's ancient water heater was malfunctioning again. Then she had spilled coffee on her first outfit choice, forcing her to change into her backup professional clothes, a navy blazer and gray slacks that were presentable but not quite as polished as she had wanted to look for this crucial meeting. Then she could not find her portfolio case and had wasted 8 precious minutes tearing through her apartment before discovering it behind the couch where she had apparently thrown it in her exhausted state the night before. By the time she got to her car, which was parked 3 blocks away and the only spot she had been able to find the previous evening, she was already stressed and running late and feeling that sick anxiety in her stomach that came from knowing she was losing control of the situation. The traffic on the FDR Drive was worse than usual, some kind of accident or construction that had reduced 3 lanes to 1, and Zara watched the minutes tick by on her dashboard clock with growing panic. 8:40, 8:45, 8:50. She was going to be late. She was going to walk into the most important meeting of her career flustered and apologetic, and they were going to judge her as unreliable and unprofessional before she even opened her presentation file. Her phone buzzed with a text message notification. She knew she should not look at it. She knew that texting while driving was dangerous and illegal and stupid. But what if it was the Meridian Industries contact person asking where she was? What if they were about to cancel the meeting? She glanced down at her phone in the cup holder, trying to read the notification on the locked screen. It was from her best friend Maya. "Good luck today. You're going to crush it." Zara smiled despite her stress, grateful for the support. And in that moment of distraction, of looking away from the road ahead for just 3 seconds, the traffic suddenly stopped. The cars in front of her hit their brakes hard. Zara looked up and saw brake lights everywhere, and slammed her own brakes, but it was too late. She was too close, going too fast. And her old Honda, with its worn brake pads, could not stop in time. She crashed into the car in front of her with a sickening crunch of metal and plastic and the explosive sound of airbags deploying. The impact threw her forward against her seatbelt hard enough to knock the breath out of her lungs. Her airbag deployed with a chemical smell that filled the car. Instantly. For a few seconds, Zara just sat there, stunned and disoriented, her ears ringing from the crash, her chest aching from the seatbelt, trying to process what had just happened. Then reality crashed in harder than the collision itself. She had just rear-ended someone, on the FDR Drive. While looking at her phone, she was going to get a ticket. Her insurance rates were going to skyrocket. She was definitely going to miss her meeting. And she had probably just destroyed any chance of landing the Meridian Industries account. Zara pushed aside the deflated airbag and looked through her cracked windshield at the car she had hit. Her stomach dropped into her shoes. It was not just any car. It was a Lamborghini. Specifically, It was a black Lamborghini Aventador with custom wheels and what had been a perfect paint job before her Honda had crumpled its entire rear end like aluminum foil. Even with her limited knowledge of luxury cars, Zara knew that Lamborghinis cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $250,000, maybe more with custom features. And she had just completely destroyed one with her 10-year-old Honda that was worth maybe $4,000 if she was lucky. The driver's door of the Lamborghini opened, and a man stepped out. Even from her position, sitting in her wrecked car, Zara could tell this was not someone she wanted to have this conversation with. He was tall, probably 6'2" or 3", with the kind of athletic build that came from serious gym time, wearing an impeccably tailored charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. His dark hair was styled perfectly despite having just been in a car accident. He moved with the kind of controlled grace that suggested complete physical confidence. And even from a distance, even through her shock and fear, Zara could see that he was absolutely furious. The man walked around his destroyed Lamborghini, examining the damage with an expression that made Zara's blood run cold. Then he turned toward her car, and she got her first clear look at his face. He was probably in his mid-30s, with sharp Italian features, olive skin, dark eyes that were currently blazing with anger, and the kind of masculine beauty that belonged on movie screens. But there was something else in his expression, something beyond just anger at a car accident. There was a dangerous intensity, a barely contained violence, the look of someone who was used to being in control and did not handle disruptions well. Zara fumbled with her seatbelt with shaking hands, finally getting it unlatched, and climbed out of her car on trembling legs. "I am so sorry," she started, her voice coming out higher and more panicked than she intended. "I did not see the traffic stopping. I am so incredibly sorry about your car." The man looked at her for a long moment, his dark eyes taking in everything about her appearance with an intensity that made her feel completely exposed and thoroughly evaluated. He studied her face, her clothing, her body language, cataloging details with the precision of someone trained to read people and situations instantly. Then he looked at her destroyed Honda with its crumpled hood and deployed airbag hanging limply from the steering wheel. Then back at his demolished Lamborghini with its entire rear end compressed like a crushed soda can. Then back at her with an expression that was impossible to read. "You were on your phone," he said. It was not a question but a statement of fact delivered with absolute certainty. His voice was deep and smooth with just a hint of an Italian accent underneath the perfect American English. And somehow the complete calmness of his tone was far more frightening than if he had been yelling and cursing and threatening. There was something terrifying about such controlled composure in the face of a $250,000 loss. I just glanced at it for a second. I swear I was not actively texting or anything dangerous. I just looked down to see who was messaging me. It was only for like 3 seconds. Zara knew she was babbling, explaining too much, sounding defensive and guilty. 3 seconds was apparently enough. You glanced at it long enough to not notice an entire highway full of stopped cars, long enough to not see brake lights ahead of you, long enough to slam into my vehicle at probably 30 miles per hour based on the damage pattern. He pulled out his own phone, an expensive smartphone in a leather case. "What is your insurance information? We need to exchange details before the police finish their report." Zara's heart sank even further into her shoes, if that was physically possible. "I have insurance. I am fully insured, completely legal. Basic liability coverage because that is all I could afford. But I do not think it covers, my policy limit is probably not going to be enough to cover a car like yours. Lamborghinis are expensive, right?" It was a stupid question. Of course they were expensive. Everyone knew that. "How much is your policy limit exactly?" His voice remained maddeningly calm. $50,000. That is the state minimum required by law in New York. The man actually laughed at that, but there was absolutely no humor in the sound, just bitter amusement at the absurdity of the situation. "My car costs $275,000 brand new. The damage you have caused will cost at least $150,000 to repair properly, possibly significantly more depending on whether the frame integrity has been compromised by the impact. Your insurance company will pay their $50,000 maximum policy limit, leaving you personally responsible for the remaining $100,000 minimum, possibly as much as $150,000 if the damage is extensive." $100,000. The number hit Zara like a physical blow, like someone had punched her directly in the stomach and knocked all the air from her lungs. She did not have $100,000. She did not have $50,000. She did not have $10,000 in any accounts anywhere. She barely had $1,000 in her checking account after paying her rent and basic monthly expenses, and most months she was operating close to zero by the time the next freelance payment arrived. "I cannot pay that," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the traffic noise surrounding them. "I do not have that kind of money. I do not have anything close to that kind of money." "Then you should not have been driving while distracted and destroying property you cannot afford to replace." The man took a step closer to her, and Zara fought the instinct to step back, to show fear, though every survival instinct was screaming at her that this man was dangerous in ways that went far beyond being angry about his car. "What is your name?" "Zara. Zara Mitchell. Zara Mitchell." He said her name slowly, as if memorizing it. "I am Luca Santoro. Does that name mean anything to you?" It should not have. Zara did not follow organized crime news or mob stories. She lived in her own small world of design work and bill paying and trying to survive in an expensive city. But something about the way he said it, the weight he gave the name, the expectation that she should recognize it, sent warning bells ringing in her head. "No," she said honestly. "Should it? Most people in New York know who I am, but perhaps you have been fortunate enough to move in circles that do not intersect with mine." He gestured at the destroyed cars, at the traffic that was backing up behind them, at the police car that Zara could now see approaching in her rearview mirror. "Until now. Now you have very much intersected with my circle, and that creates a problem for both of us." "I will pay you back," Zara said desperately. "I will work extra jobs, I will make payments, whatever it takes. I just need time." "How much time?" "At your current income, which I am guessing is modest given your car and clothes, how long would it take you to save $100,000? Zara did quick mental math and felt sick. Even if she somehow doubled her income and lived on nothing, it would take years. 5 years minimum, probably longer. "I do not know," she admitted. "A long time. Too long. I do not wait years for debts to be repaid. I resolve problems quickly and permanently." The police officer was getting out of his car now, walking toward them. Luca looked at the approaching officer, then back at Zara, and made a decision that she could see happening behind his dark eyes. "I am going to offer you an alternative to spending the next decade in debt to me, and likely having your wages garnished by my attorneys until you are 40 years old. You will work for me, directly for me. I need someone with your skills." "My skills? You do not even..." "I know what I do. You are a graphic designer. You have a portfolio case in your car and you were clearly rushing to some kind of important meeting. You work freelance based on your anxiety level about being late. And you are talented. Otherwise, you would not be this stressed about losing whatever opportunity you were rushing toward." He paused as the police officer came within earshot. "I will explain the details later. For now, just tell the officer what happened, and let me handle the rest." The next 30 minutes were a blur of police reports and insurance information exchanges and tow trucks arriving to collect both vehicles. Luca handled everything with calm efficiency, speaking to the police officer with a courtesy that somehow still conveyed that he was the one in control of the situation. He did not mention Zara's phone. He did not demand she be ticketed. He simply explained that traffic had stopped suddenly and she had been unable to brake in time, which was technically true, even if it left out the crucial detail about her distraction. The officer wrote up his report, took photos of both vehicles, and eventually sent them on their way with instructions to contact their insurance companies. "My driver will take you wherever you need to go," Luca said, gesturing to a black SUV that had appeared at some point during the police interaction. "I assume you still have that meeting you were rushing to?" "It started 30 minutes ago," Zara said numbly. "I already texted them to explain I was in an accident. They said they would reschedule, but I could hear the disappointment in their response. They probably think I am making excuses. Give me the company name. I will call them personally and explain that the accident was significant and required your immediate attention for legal reasons. They will reschedule." "Why would you do that? Why would you help me?" Luca looked at her intently. "Because you are about to become very valuable to me, Zara Mitchell. And I take care of my assets. Now get in the car. My driver will take you home so you can clean up and prepare properly for your meeting. Then tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, you will come to this address." He handed her a business card with an address in Tribeca embossed in silver lettering. "We will discuss the terms of your employment and how you will work off your debt to me." "What if I refuse? What if I just declare bankruptcy or something?" "You could do that, and then you would spend years rebuilding your destroyed credit while I pursue other methods of collecting what you owe me. Methods that would be far less pleasant than the arrangement I am offering." There was no mistaking the threat in his voice, subtle but absolutely clear. "Or you could accept my offer, work for me for a reasonable period of time, and emerge from this situation with your debt cleared and significantly more money in your bank account than you have now. Your choice. It was not really a choice at all. And they both knew it. Zara took the business card with trembling fingers. 9 o'clock tomorrow. I will be there. That evening, after the rescheduled meeting with Meridian Industries that had somehow gone even better than expected after Luca had personally called them and vouched for her professionalism and the genuine emergency that had caused her delay, Zara sat in her tiny apartment and tried to process everything that had happened. She had wrecked her car. She had destroyed a Lamborghini. She had met a man who was clearly dangerous and powerful in ways she did not fully understand. And she had agreed to work for him doing who knows what in order to pay off a massive debt. She pulled out her laptop and typed Luca Santoro, New York into the search engine. The results made her stomach drop. There were news articles, carefully worded to avoid libel but clear in their implications. Luca Santoro was the suspected head of the Santoro crime family, one of the oldest and most powerful organized crime organizations in New York. He controlled territories in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. He had legitimate business interests in restaurants, construction, real estate development, and import-export companies. He also had suspected interests in illegal gambling, money laundering, and protection rackets. He had never been arrested, never been charged with anything, despite decades of law enforcement attention. He was considered extremely intelligent, ruthlessly efficient, and absolutely dangerous to anyone who crossed him. And Zara had just rear-ended his car and put herself in debt to him. She had essentially handed a Mafia boss leverage over her life. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your car has been towed to a repair shop that I own. The damage is totaled, but I have arranged for you to use a rental car until we resolve your employment situation. The rental will be delivered to your address tomorrow at 7 a.m. Do not be late to our meeting. L.S. Zara stared at the message, her mind reeling. He knew her address. Of course he knew her address. He had access to her license plate, her insurance information, probably her entire life history if he wanted it. She was not just in debt to a rich man whose car she had wrecked. She was entangled with a Mafia boss who now had control over aspects of her life she had not even considered. She typed back a simple reply. Thank you for the rental. I will be there at 9. His response came immediately. 8:30 would be better. We have much to discuss. Zara changed her alarm for 7 a.m. and tried to sleep, though her mind kept replaying the crash, kept seeing Luca's dark eyes evaluating her, kept wondering what exactly she had agreed to when she accepted his offer. The address Luca had given her led to a building in Tribeca that from the outside looked like just another upscale residential tower, all modern glass and steel and contemporary architecture that fit perfectly into the neighborhood of converted warehouses and expensive lofts. But when Zara gave her name to the doorman stationed behind a sleek marble desk in the lobby, presenting herself as having an appointment with Mr. Santoro, she was directed not to the residential elevators that serviced the apartment floors, but to a private elevator tucked in an alcove to the side, an elevator that required a special keycard to even call, let alone access. The doorman provided the keycard with instructions to press the button for the penthouse level, handling the card with a deference that suggested this was not standard procedure but something reserved for special visitors. The elevator rose smoothly and swiftly, so fast that Zara felt her stomach drop slightly, opening directly into a penthouse office space that was absolutely unlike anything Zara had ever seen in her life. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Lower Manhattan, the Hudson River, and even glimpses of New Jersey across the Coal Water. The decor was aggressively modern and undeniably masculine. All dark woods and supple leather furniture and abstract art pieces that probably cost more than Zara made in a year, possibly more than she had made in her entire freelance career combined. One entire wall was covered in built-in bookshelves filled with what appeared to be antique leather-bound volumes, many with titles in what Zara assumed was Italian. A massive desk dominated one corner of the space, more like a command center than a work surface, with multiple large computer monitors displaying what looked like financial data and security camera feeds and various documents. Stacks of papers were arranged with military precision across the desk surface, everything organized with the kind of obsessive attention to detail that spoke of either extreme professionalism or control issues, possibly both. Luca was standing by the windows when Zara entered, his back to the elevator, talking on his phone in rapid Italian. That was too fast and idiomatic for Zara to catch any specific words, even though she had taken 2 years of Italian in college. His voice rose and fell with the passion and expressiveness that seemed innate to the language, his free hand gesturing emphatically, even though whoever he was speaking to could not see him. He glanced over his shoulder when he heard the elevator doors open, his dark eyes finding Zara immediately, and he held up one finger indicating she should wait while he finished his conversation. Zara stood awkwardly near the elevator, not sure whether she should sit down or remain standing, whether she should look around or keep her eyes down, whether she should try to project confidence or just admit how completely out of her depth she felt in this moment. She settled for standing still and looking out the windows at the spectacular view, trying to calm her racing heart and prepare herself mentally for whatever this meeting would bring. In the morning light streaming through the windows, he was even more intimidating than he had been on the highway. His suit today was navy blue, perfectly tailored to his athletic frame, with a white shirt and no tie. His dark hair was styled immaculately. He looked like he had stepped out of a fashion magazine spread about successful businessmen, except there was an edge to him, a sense of controlled danger, that no magazine would ever quite capture. "You are early," he said. "That is good. Punctuality matters in my organization." "What exactly is your organization?" Zara asked, deciding that direct questions were better than dancing around the obvious. "I researched you last night. I know who you are, what you are, so I would appreciate honesty about what you are asking me to do." Luca smiled, and it made him even more handsome and even more frightening simultaneously. "I appreciate directness. Yes, I run a family business that operates in both legal and illegal spheres. Yes, I am what the media would call a mob boss, though I consider myself a businessman who navigates systems that others find too complicated or corrupt. And no, I am not going to ask you to do anything illegal. Then what do you want me to do?" "I have a problem," Luca said, walking to his desk and pulling out a folder. "My family's legitimate businesses, particularly my restaurants and real estate holdings, have terrible branding, inconsistent logos, outdated websites, marketing materials that look like they were designed in 1995. It makes us look unprofessional and draws unwanted attention because we look like we are trying to hide something. I have been searching for a designer who could modernize our entire visual identity, create a cohesive brand across all our holdings, make us look like the successful, legitimate businesses we are trying to become." He handed her the folder. "I looked at your portfolio online last night. Your work is excellent. Clean, modern, sophisticated. Exactly what I need. You will rebrand my family's legitimate business empire." Zara opened the folder and found detailed information about dozens of businesses: Italian restaurants, construction companies, a luxury car dealership, several real estate development firms, an import-export business, a security company, all of them with terrible, dated design work that screamed old-school mob front, even if that was not the intention. "This is months of work," Zara said, flipping through pages. "Maybe a year, depending on how extensive you want the rebranding to be. I am aware, which is why you will work for me exclusively for the next 12 months. You will be paid $75,000, deposited monthly into your account. At the end of 12 months, your debt to me will be cleared. You will have earned significantly more than you typically make freelancing, and you will have portfolio pieces that will attract high-end clients for the rest of your career." The terms were generous. Suspiciously generous. "What is the catch?" Zara asked. "There is always a catch. The catch is that you will work from here, from this office, 5 days a week. You will be available when I need you, which may sometimes include evenings or weekends if urgent situations arise. You will not discuss my business with anyone outside this organization, and you will occasionally need to attend events with me as my date." "Your date? I thought this was a professional arrangement." "It is, but I frequently attend business dinners, charity galas, art gallery openings, events where appearances matter, and having a beautiful, intelligent woman on my arm sends certain messages about legitimacy and success. You will accompany me to these events, wear clothes I provide, smile and make conversation, and help me project the image of a successful businessman rather than a criminal thug." Zara's head was spinning. "So I am what? Your employee? Your arm candy? Your fake girlfriend? You are my designer and, occasionally, my companion at public events. Nothing more unless you choose otherwise." The way he said that last part made Zara's skin tingle with awareness. "I am not sleeping with you," she said bluntly. "I am not agreeing to anything beyond professional work. I am not asking you to. If something develops between us beyond our professional arrangement, it will be because we both choose it, not because it is required. I do not force women into my bed, Zara. I do not need to, but I will not pretend I am not attracted to you, and I think you are attracted to me as well, even though you do not want to be." He was right, and Zara hated that he was right. Even knowing who he was, what he was, even understanding the danger he represented, She could not deny that Luca Santoro was one of the most attractive men she had ever met. But attraction was not enough reason to get involved with a mafia boss. "I need this to be professional," she insisted. "Strictly professional." "Agreed. Strictly professional, unless we both decide otherwise." He extended his hand. "Do we have an agreement? 12 months of exclusive work for $75,000 and cancellation of your debt?" Zara looked at his extended hand, knowing that shaking it would change her life in ways she could not predict. But the alternative was years of crushing debt, destroyed credit, and financial ruin. She took his hand. His grip was strong and warm and sent electricity up her arm. "We have an agreement." "Excellent. Your desk is over there." He pointed to a sleek workspace near the windows with a top-of-the-line computer and design equipment. "I took the liberty of setting up professional design software and tools. If you need anything else, tell my assistant Marco and he will arrange it. Start with the restaurant group. I want new logos and complete brand identities for all 7 locations within the next 6 weeks." 6 weeks was aggressive but doable. Zara walked to what was apparently now her desk and sat down, running her fingers over the expensive keyboard and looking at the multiple high-resolution monitors. This was the kind of setup she had dreamed about but never been able to afford. "One more thing," Luca said, drawing her attention back to him. "The reason I can offer you such favorable terms, the reason I am willing to clear your debt so easily, is because your accident yesterday was not entirely your fault." "What do you mean?" "I was the one who was not paying attention." "True. But the reason traffic stopped so suddenly was because one of my competitors arranged for a truck to brake check me, to cause an accident that would either kill me or at least significantly injure me. You just happened to be behind me when it happened. So in a sense, you are a victim of an assassination attempt on me." Zara felt the blood drain from her face. "Someone tried to kill you?" "Yesterday. And I was just collateral damage?" "Yes. Which means that by association with me, by being present during an attack on me, you have now been seen by my enemies. They have probably already identified you, researched you, assessed whether you are important to me, which means you need my protection whether you like it or not." "Wait, are you saying I am in danger? That people might come after me because I accidentally rear-ended you?" "Possibly. Probably, actually. Once they realize you are working for me, my enemies will see you as either a potential target to hurt me or a potential source of information about my operations. Either way, you need protection." Luca pressed a button on his desk phone. "Marco, come in please." The door opened and a large man in his 40s entered, built like a professional bodyguard with the awareness of someone trained in security. "Marco handles security for my personal interests. He will assign someone to watch your apartment building and escort you to and from work each day. You will not be alone. You will not be unprotected. And you will report any suspicious activity immediately." "This is insane," Zara said, standing up from her new desk. "I crashed into your car. I agreed to work for you to pay off my debt. I did not agree to being dragged into mob wars and needing armed protection. You did not agree to it, but it is the reality of the situation now. I am sorry for that, truly, but I will not let you be harmed because of your association with me. You will be protected." Marco nodded respectfully at Zara. "Miss Mitchell, I will stay out of your way as much as possible. You will barely notice the protection detail, but you will be safe." Zara wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, wanted to walk out of this office and never come back. But she thought about her tiny apartment with its flimsy locks and her vulnerable life, and the very real possibility that she had accidentally stepped into something far more dangerous than a car accident. "Fine," she said finally, "but I want to know what I am dealing with. Who tried to kill you? What kind of danger am I actually in?" Luca exchanged a glance with Marco, some silent communication passing between them. Then he walked to the windows and stood with his back to her, looking out at the city. "Have you heard of the Russo family?" "No. They run most of the criminal operations in Brooklyn and parts of Queens. For years, we have had a tense but stable peace with them. They stay in their territory. We stay in ours. We cooperate on certain ventures that benefit both families. But recently, their new leadership has decided they want to expand into Manhattan, into territories that have belonged to my family for 3 generations. Yesterday's attempt on my life was likely their way of testing our defenses and trying to eliminate me so they can deal with my less experienced underboss. So because I crashed into you during their attack, they now think I am what? Important to you? Part of your organization? Yes, and I am going to let them keep thinking that, because it serves my purposes." Luca turned to face her again. "If they believe you are important to me, they will either try to kidnap you to use as leverage, or they will watch you closely to gather intelligence. Either way, having you here, working for me, protected by my people, it sends a message that I am not afraid of their threats, and that I protect what is mine. I am not yours. For the next 12 months, professionally, you are. And that professional relationship now requires personal protection. I am sorry you are caught in this situation, Zara. If I could have prevented your involvement, I would have. But since we cannot change what happened, we must manage the consequences together. Zara sank back into her chair, overwhelmed by how quickly her life had spiraled from routine to dangerous. 24 hours ago, her biggest worry was landing a freelance client. Now she was working for a mafia boss, under protection from rival crime families, and trapped in a situation she could not escape without potentially ending up dead. I need time to process this, she said quietly. Take the day, Luca said. Go home, rest, think about everything. Marco will have someone escort you back to your apartment. Tomorrow, come back at 9 a.m. and we will start your actual work. And Zara? She looked up at him. I know this is overwhelming. I know you are frightened. But I promise you, you are safer with my protection than you would be trying to navigate this alone. Trust me. It was a lot to ask. Trust from someone he had essentially forced into employment. Trust from someone he had dragged into danger. But looking at his steady dark eyes, at the confidence in his posture, at the certainty in his voice, Zara found herself wanting to trust him despite every logical reason not to. I will try, she said. And she meant it. Over the next 2 weeks, Zara settled into a routine that was both stranger and more comfortable than she had expected. She arrived at Luca's Tribeca office each morning at 9, escorted by a quiet, professional bodyguard named Tony who picked her up from her apartment building and drove her in a nice sedan that was far more comfortable than her destroyed Honda had ever been. She worked at her sleek new desk, designing logos and brand identities for Luca's restaurant group, losing herself in the creative work that she genuinely loved. The restaurants were actually interesting projects. They were all high-end Italian establishments, each with its own character and cuisine focus. Some were traditional red sauce places in Little Italy, others were modern fusion restaurants in the meatpacking district. One was a Michelin-starred fine dining experience in Midtown. Luca wanted each to maintain its individual identity, while being connected through subtle design elements that would create brand cohesion across the portfolio. It was exactly the kind of complex, creative challenge that Zara thrived on. And Luca was surprisingly easy to work for. He had strong opinions about design, but explained them clearly and listened when she pushed back with professional reasoning. He understood what he wanted to communicate through his brands, and trusted her expertise on how to achieve those goals visually. Their design review meetings were productive, focused, and occasionally even enjoyable when they both got excited about a particular concept or solution. But there was always an undercurrent of awareness between them, a tension that had nothing to do with design work. Zara found herself noticing things about Luca that she should not be noticing. The way he rolled up his shirt sleeves when he was concentrating, revealing strong forearms. The way he ran his hand through his hair when he was frustrated, messing up the perfect styling in a way that made him look more human and less like a dangerous crime boss. The way his entire demeanor changed when he spoke Italian on the phone, becoming more animated and passionate. The way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was focused on her work, with an intensity that made her skin feel too warm. And she caught herself being more aware of her own appearance on work days, choosing outfits that were professional but flattering, spending extra time on her makeup, wearing the perfume that she knew was particularly nice. She told herself it was just about looking professional for a high-paying job. She knew she was lying to herself. 3 weeks into her employment, Luca told her about the first event she would need to accompany him to. There is a charity gala next Friday night at the Museum of Natural History, he said during one of their afternoon meetings. It benefits children's education programs in underserved neighborhoods. I donate to the organization every year and attend to maintain certain business relationships. You will come with me. It was not a request. What do I wear to something like that? I have arranged for a stylist to visit you. Tomorrow afternoon with dress options. Choose whatever you are comfortable in. I will send a car for you at 7 p.m. next Friday. That Thursday, a woman named Gabriella arrived at Luca's office with 3 garment bags full of evening gowns. Zara tried them on in the private bathroom connected to the office suite, and each dress was more beautiful than the last. Elegant designer gowns in rich colors, all perfectly sized for her, all clearly expensive beyond anything she had ever worn before. She chose a midnight blue gown with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt, simple but stunning, that made her brown skin look radiant and her curves look incredible. When she stepped out to show Gabriella, Luca was standing near his desk and froze when he saw her. For a long moment, he just stared, and Zara felt heat rise to her cheeks under his intense gaze. "That is the one," he said, his voice slightly rough. "You look stunning." "Thank you," Zara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I will try. Not to embarrass you. That is not possible. You could never embarrass me." The way he said it made Zara's heart race. The night of the gala, Zara spent 2 hours getting ready in her tiny apartment, doing her makeup with care, styling her natural hair in an elegant updo that took forever but looked amazing when finished. The dress fit perfectly, and when she added the simple diamond necklace that Gabriella had brought as an accessory option, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. She looked like someone who belonged at fancy galas with powerful men. When the car arrived to collect her, driven by Tony, who gave her an approving nod when he saw her, Zara felt her anxiety spike. This was different from working in the office. This was stepping into Luca's public life, playing a role, pretending to be someone important to him. The car brought her back to Luca's Tribeca building, and Tony escorted her up to the penthouse office where Luca was waiting. He was wearing a tuxedo, and Zara's breath caught when she saw him. If he was handsome in his regular business suits, he was absolutely devastating in formal wear. The tuxedo was perfectly tailored, emphasizing his broad shoulders and athletic build. His hair was styled immaculately. He looked like he had stepped out of a James Bond film. "You are breathtaking," Luca said when he saw her, and the sincerity in his voice made Zara's heart skip. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." He smiled, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face. "Come, we have a museum gala to attend." The evening was unlike anything Zara had experienced before in her relatively modest life. The Museum of Natural History was closed to the regular public, but filled to capacity with New York's elite. Hundreds of people, all dressed in expensive formal wear, all drinking champagne from crystal flutes and making sophisticated conversation under the massive dinosaur skeletons and elaborate natural history exhibits that the museum was famous for. The contrast between the prehistoric bones suspended overhead and the contemporary glamour below created a surreal atmosphere that made Zara feel like she had stepped into a completely different world. Luca kept his hand on the small of her back as they moved through the crowd, navigating the social landscape with practiced ease, and that simple possessive gesture sent continuous shivers down her spine, while simultaneously making several women look at her with obvious envy barely concealed behind polite smiles. His touch was warm through the thin fabric of her gown, proprietary but not controlling, protective but not confining. He introduced her to an endless stream of business associates, politicians who represented various New York districts, legitimate businessmen who either genuinely did not know about his other activities or deliberately chose not to care as long as their own interests were served. He presented her consistently as his girlfriend, not his employee or his designer or his associate, but his girlfriend. And Zara found herself playing the role with surprising ease, smiling and making charming small talk, and asking interested questions about people's businesses and families. She let herself lean into him naturally when photographers circulated through the crowd, taking pictures for the society pages that would run in the Times and the Observer, capturing moments that would become public record of their relationship. At one point in the evening, during the portion of the gala dedicated to dancing with a live jazz band that played sophisticated standards from decades past, Luca pulled her onto the dance floor and into his arms, his hand firm on her waist, his other hand taking hers with practiced confidence, moving with a natural grace that suggested he was extremely comfortable on a dance floor and had probably been taking dance lessons since childhood. "You are doing wonderfully tonight," he murmured in her ear, his breath warm against her skin in a way that made concentration difficult. "Natural and charming and absolutely captivating. Everyone believes we are genuinely together, that this is a real relationship and not a business arrangement. Is that important? That they believe it?" Zara asked, trying to focus on the conversation instead of how good it felt to be held by him, how perfectly they moved together, how right this felt despite all the reasons it should feel wrong. "It helps significantly. In my world, perception is often substantially more important than reality. If people believe I have a beautiful, intelligent, accomplished girlfriend who works as a legitimate designer, it makes me look more like a successful businessman and less like a criminal thug operating outside the law. It is strategically valuable for my image transformation efforts and my attempts to legitimize the family's operations." "So I am just image management then? A prop in your public relations campaign?" Zara asked, trying to keep her voice light and teasing even though the words carried a sting of genuine hurt underneath the humor. Luca's hand tightened on her waist. You are far more than that, but I will not lie and say the public perception does not benefit me. I am a practical man, Zara. I use every advantage I have. But that does not mean I am using you. What is growing between us? That is real, not strategic. What is growing between us? Zara asked, her heart pounding. This. The way you look at me when you think I am not paying attention. The way I find excuses to touch your hand when we are reviewing designs. The way we are both fighting something that might be inevitable. He pulled her slightly closer. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and woodsy that made her want to lean in. I am attracted to you, Zara. Have been since I saw you climb out of your destroyed car looking terrified and beautiful. And I think you feel the same, even though you are frightened by it. Of course I am frightened by it, Zara whispered. You are a mafia boss. Being attracted to you is probably the worst decision I could make. Probably, Luca agreed. But when has anyone ever been logical about attraction? They finished the dance in charged silence, and for the rest of the evening, Zara was hyper-aware of every touch, every glance, every moment when Luca's hand found her waist or his thumb brushed across her knuckles. By the time they left the gala at midnight, she felt wound-tight with tension and awareness. In the car riding back to her apartment, Luca sat beside her in the back seat, and the proximity in the enclosed space made Zara's skin feel electric. I will not cross any lines you do not want crossed, Luca said quietly. But I need you to know that this, what is happening between us, it is not just about our arrangement. It is not about you working for me. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, I want to explore what this could be. And if I am never ready? If I decide that getting involved with you beyond our professional arrangement is too dangerous? Then I will respect that. You will work for me for 12 months as agreed. I will protect you. And at the end you will walk away with your debt cleared and we will part as professional associates. He looked at her intently. But I hope you will give us a chance. Because I think we could be extraordinary together. Before Zara could respond, the car pulled up outside her apartment building. Tony got out and opened her door, and Luca followed her out onto the sidewalk. Good night, Zara, Luca said, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips in a gesture that was both old-fashioned and incredibly intimate. Thank you for a wonderful evening. He released her hand and got back in the car, leaving Zara standing on the sidewalk, her hand tingling where his lips had touched it, her heart racing, her mind spinning with thoughts of what might happen if she let herself fall for a man who was absolutely wrong for her in every logical way but felt so incredibly right. Over the next month, the tension between them continued to build. Luca found reasons to work late on nights when Zara was still at the office, both of them reviewing designs or discussing brand strategies, conversations that would drift into more personal topics. They talked about everything. His childhood growing up in the Santoro family, being groomed from a young age to take over leadership, never having a choice about his path, her experience as a Black woman in the design world, fighting for recognition, dealing with clients who underestimated her abilities or stole her ideas, his struggles with wanting to transform his family's operations into something more legitimate while managing old guard members who resisted change, her dreams of someday opening her own design studio, being her own boss, building something entirely her own. And gradually, Zara found herself falling for him. Despite every warning her logical brain was screaming, she fell for the way he listened when she talked about design theory as if it was the most fascinating subject in the world. She fell for the way he quietly increased her monthly payment to $90,000 without telling her, just changing the deposit amount and saying he valued her work. She fell for the way he protected her, not just physically with bodyguards, but emotionally, never pushing her into situations she was uncomfortable with, always respecting her boundaries. She fell for the small moments of vulnerability when he would admit fears or doubts, showing her the human beneath the powerful crime boss exterior. And she could see that he was falling for her too. The way his eyes would soften when she walked into the office each morning. The way he would bring her favorite coffee from a cafe she had mentioned once in passing. The way he would find excuses to touch her hand, her shoulder, any contact that was technically appropriate but charged with meaning. The way he looked at her sometimes like she was the most important thing in his world. 2 months into her employment, everything changed. Zara was working late at the office, perfecting a website design for Luca's real estate company, when she heard shouting in Italian from Luca's private office. She looked up from her computer to see Luca arguing with a man she had never met before, both of them gesturing angrily, their voices rising. Marco appeared beside her desk, his expression tense. "You should go home, Miss Mitchell. This is family business. Not safe for you to be here." "What is happening?" Who is that? Luca's cousin Enzo. He is angry about the changes Luca is making to the organization. Things might get violent. As if to confirm Marco's warning, something crashed in Luca's office, the sound of breaking glass and furniture being overturned. Zara stood up, her heart racing. I am not leaving him alone with someone violent. Miss Mitchell, please. Luca will kill me if something happens to you. But before Zara could respond, the door to Luca's office slammed open and Enzo stormed out, his face flushed with rage. He stopped when he saw Zara, his eyes narrowing. So this is the black girl you are playing house with? Enzo said, his voice dripping with contempt. This is why you are going soft? Why you are destroying our family traditions for legitimate business and political correctness? For some designer you barely know? Watch your mouth, Luca said, appearing in the doorway behind his cousin. His voice was deadly quiet. Do not speak about her. Do not look at her. Get out of my office. Or what? You will have me killed? Your own blood? This is what happens when you let outsiders into our world. You become weak, sentimental, useless as a leader. Enzo took a step toward Zara, and Marco immediately moved between them. But Luca crossed the space in 3 strides and grabbed his cousin by the jacket, slamming him against the wall with a force that shook picture frames. You will never speak about her that way again, Luca said, his voice vibrating with barely controlled violence. You will never come near her, never look at her, never mention her name. And if you have a problem with the way I run this family, you are welcome to challenge me formally, but you will lose, Enzo, because I am stronger, smarter, and more ruthless than you will ever be. The only reason you are still breathing is because you are family. Do not make me regret that, Mercy. He released Enzo, who stumbled and then fled toward the elevator, shooting one last hateful look at Zara before the doors closed. Luca stood for a moment, his chest heaving, his hands clenched into fists. Then he turned to Zara, and his expression shifted instantly from dangerous to concerned. Are you all right? Did he frighten you? I am fine, Zara said, though her heart was racing. Are you okay? Come here. Luca took her hand and led her into his office, closing the door behind them. The room was a disaster, with a broken whiskey glass on the floor, overturned chairs, and documents scattered everywhere. I am sorry you had to witness that. Enzo has been challenging my authority for months. He wants us to return to the old ways, violent and territorial and ruthless. He does not understand that those ways are what destroy families like ours. He called me an outsider, said I am making you weak. You are not an outsider. You are... Luca stopped, seeming to struggle with what to say. You are becoming essential to me, and that terrifies me, because essential means vulnerable. It means I have given you power to hurt me, but I cannot seem to stop myself from wanting you here, from needing you here. Luca, Zara stepped closer to him. I am scared too. Scared of what you are, what your world is, what being close to you means. But I cannot deny how I feel anymore. I am falling for you, and that is probably the most dangerous thing I have ever done. He cupped her face with both hands, his touch gentle despite the violence he had just displayed. If we do this, if we cross this line, everything changes. You will not just be my employee. You will be mine, and I will be yours, and I will protect you with everything I have. But I will also expect you to be honest with me, to trust me, to let me into your life completely. That is a lot to ask. I know. But that is who I am. I do not do things halfway, Zara. If you are mine completely, and I am yours the same way. Zara thought about all the reasons this was a terrible idea. The danger, the complications, the fact that she was standing in a Mafia boss's office after witnessing him threaten violence against his own cousin. She thought about how her life had been safe and predictable and under her control before she crashed into his car. But she also thought about how alive she felt around him, how challenged and respected and valued, how he looked at her like she was the most fascinating person he had ever met, how his protection made her feel safe in ways she had never felt before, how the attraction between them had grown into something deeper, something that felt real and substantial despite the insanity of their circumstances. Kiss me, she said. Luca's eyes darkened with heat. Are you sure? No, but do it anyway. He kissed her, and it was nothing like Zara had imagined. It was fierce and consuming, his hands in her hair, his body pressed against hers, all the tension of the past 2 months exploding into this moment. Zara kissed him back with equal intensity, her hands gripping his shoulders, letting herself fall into this dangerous, wonderful, terrifying thing that was happening between them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against hers. I have wanted to do that since the moment I saw you climbing out of your wrecked car. I have wanted you to do that since the first time you made me coffee exactly how I like it. He laughed, the sound full of relief and joy. Then we have wasted a lot of time fighting this. Probably, but we are not fighting anymore. No, we are not. He kissed her again, softer this time but no less intense. And Zara felt herself surrendering to something she had been resisting for months. She was falling in love with a mafia boss. It was dangerous and complicated and probably doomed to end badly. But as Luca's arms wrapped around her and his lips moved against hers, Zara decided that some risks were worth taking. Some crashes were the beginning of something extraordinary, rather than the end of everything safe. Over the weeks that followed, their relationship deepened in ways that both thrilled and terrified Zara. Luca was attentive and passionate, sending her flowers to the office, taking her to private dinners at restaurants he owned where they could talk without being overheard, protecting her with an intensity that was both overwhelming and comforting. But he was also honest about his world in ways that Zara appreciated, even when the truth was difficult. He told her about the family businesses, both legitimate and criminal. He explained the politics of organized crime, the alliances and rivalries that governed his world. He introduced her to his inner circle, the trusted advisors and loyal soldiers who ran his operations, and made it clear that she was important to him, that disrespecting her meant disrespecting him. And gradually, Zara found herself becoming part of his world, rather than just an outsider looking in. She attended more events with him, each one making their relationship more public and more real. She met his sister Sophia, a successful lawyer who worked as legitimate counsel for the family's legal businesses, and was surprised to find a friend in a woman who understood the complications of loving someone in Luca's world. She even met his mother, Juliana, a formidable woman, in her 60s who ran the family's restaurant operations and evaluated Zara with sharp eyes before apparently deciding she approved. "You are good for my son," Juliana said in heavily accented English during a Sunday dinner at her home. He smiles now. Has not smiled this much in years. You make him remember there is more to life than business and revenge and power. But the danger never went away. The protection detail became more intense after Enzo's confrontation, with Tony joined by a second bodyguard whenever Zara left her apartment. Luca insisted she move to a more secure building, offering to cover the rent, though Zara refused to let him pay for everything, wanting to maintain some financial independence. There were incidents. A threatening note left on her apartment door that Marco immediately investigated. A car that followed her for 3 blocks before her security detail intervened. A brick thrown through the window of one of Luca's restaurants with a message warning him that his girlfriend made him vulnerable. Each incident made Luca more protective and more determined to end the conflict with the Russo family that was driving the attacks. "I am handling it," he told Zara when she asked about his plans. "Negotiations are happening. Terms are being discussed. Within a month, this will be resolved. Will the resolution be violent? That depends on whether the Russos are smart enough to accept reasonable terms or foolish enough to keep pushing for war." His voice was hard. "But I will not let them hurt you, Zara. I will burn down their entire operation before I let them touch you." The intensity of his protectiveness should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel valued in ways she had never experienced before. No one had ever fought for her like this, been willing to go to war for her safety. It was intoxicating and dangerous in equal measure. 6 months into working for Luca, 6 months into their complicated relationship that had evolved from professional arrangement to genuine romantic partnership, 6 months into believing she was relatively safe despite the dangers of his world, Zara had her first genuinely terrifying encounter with the reality of being involved with a mafia boss. She was leaving the office late one evening around 9 o'clock, later than she had intended to stay, but she had been perfecting a particularly challenging logo design and had lost track of time in that way that sometimes happened when she was deeply focused on creative work. She was walking across the sidewalk to the car where Tony was waiting with the engine running, his eyes constantly scanning the street with the vigilance of a professional bodyguard, when an unmarked white van suddenly pulled up beside her with screeching tires, and 2 men jumped out of the sliding side door. They moved with professional speed and obvious training, clearly not random street criminals but skilled operatives who had planned this operation carefully. They were wearing dark clothes and ski masks that obscured their faces completely, and they moved toward Zara with clear intent to grab her and force her into the vehicle before anyone could react or intervene. But Tony was faster than they had anticipated. He had his gun drawn and pointed before they reached Zara, his movements so smooth and practiced that the weapon seemed to materialize in his hand instantly. He shot the first attacker in the leg, the gunshot impossibly loud in the relatively quiet Tribeca street, and the man went down screaming and clutching his thigh. The second attacker tried to tackle Tony, clearly willing to sacrifice himself to complete the mission, but Tony sidestepped the attack with surprising agility for a man of his size and delivered a brutal strike to the back of the attacker's head that dropped him to the pavement. Within seconds, seemingly appearing from nowhere like supernatural guardians, 3 more members of Luca's security team materialized from hidden positions around the building entrance, in doorways and parked cars and shadowed alcoves where they had apparently been stationed as backup protection that Zara had never even noticed. What had started as a kidnapping attempt became something much more violent and one-sided. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes bright in the evening darkness, and both attackers were down and bleeding before they could retreat or complete their mission. The van driver tried to escape, flooring the accelerator and leaving his accomplices behind. But one of the security team members shot out the tires and the vehicle crashed into a parked car 2 blocks away. Zara found herself shielded behind Tony's considerable body, his arm around her protectively, her ears ringing painfully from the gunshots fired so close to her, her mind completely unable to process what had just happened with any coherent thought. The entire incident had taken maybe 30 seconds from start to finish, but it felt like hours, like time had slowed down and stretched out into an eternity of violence and fear and adrenaline. Then Luca was there, pulling her into his arms, his face pale with fear and fury. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you?" "I am fine. Tony protected me." Zara was shaking, adrenaline making her feel dizzy and sick. "They tried to grab me. They were going to kidnap me." "I know, and they will pay for it." Luca's voice was cold in a way Zara had never heard before. "Every single person involved in planning this will pay. I am ending this tonight." "What does that mean?" "It means the Russos just declared war by attacking you, and they will regret it." That night, while Zara stayed in Luca's penthouse under extremely heavy guard with no fewer than 6 armed security personnel stationed throughout the apartment and the building, while she tried unsuccessfully to sleep and kept replaying the attack in her mind, Luca went to war in the calculated, strategic way that had made him one of the most successful crime bosses in New York. She did not see exactly what happened during those long dark hours. She did not witness the violence directly, or hear the negotiations, or watch the power dynamics play out. But she heard about it later from Sophia, Luca's sister, who came to sit with her while Luca handled what he called family business, bringing wine and comfort and explanations that helped Zara understand the world she had entered. "There was a meeting between the families that night," Sophia explained. "A formal sit-down in a neutral location, probably one of the old social clubs in Little Italy that still functioned as Switzerland-like territories where business could be conducted under rules of temporary truce. Terms were discussed at gunpoint, with both sides bringing armed soldiers who stood against the walls, ready to turn the meeting into a bloodbath if negotiations failed. Territories were negotiated with the precision of diplomats drawing national borders. Profit-sharing arrangements were recalculated. Spheres of influence were redefined, and blood was spilled, though Luca made absolutely certain through both strategy and application of force that it was Russo blood and not his own people who paid the ultimate price for the kidnapping attempt. 3 of the Russo family's top soldiers died that night, killed in retaliation for the attack on Zara. The Russo underboss was badly beaten, hospitalized with injuries that would take months to heal, sent as a message that attacking Luca's woman was unforgivable and would be met with overwhelming response. And the head of the Russo family himself, Salvatore Russo, was forced to accept terms that significantly diminished his organization's power and influence throughout New York. By morning, by the time dawnlight started filtering through the penthouse windows and Zara finally gave up on sleep entirely, a new agreement was in place. The agreement gave Luca's family clear supremacy and undisputed control in Manhattan and large portions of Queens. It forced the Russos back to their Brooklyn territories with significantly reduced power, with heavy restrictions on their activities, with financial penalties that would cripple their operations for years. It established Luca as the dominant force in New York's organized crime landscape, someone not to be challenged, someone whose authority was now backed by demonstrated willingness to use overwhelming violence in defense of his interests. And by morning, by the time Luca finally returned to the penthouse, exhausted and slightly bloodstained but uninjured, Zara understood more clearly than ever before exactly what kind of man she had fallen in love with. She understood what he was truly capable of when protecting what he considered his. She saw the evidence of violence in his split knuckles and the blood spatters on his shirt collar that probably were not his own. She recognized the hardness in his eyes that spoke of things done that could not be undone, of lines crossed that could never be uncrossed, Luca was capable of great violence when the situation demanded it. He was absolutely ruthless in defense of his family and his territory and the people he cared about. He was a man who would kill without hesitation or remorse if he judged that killing was necessary or justified. He operated in a moral universe that was foreign to Zara's own ethical framework, where violence was a tool to be used strategically rather than an absolute wrong to be avoided at all costs. But he was also a man who had held her tenderly all night after she woke up screaming from nightmares about the attempted kidnapping, who had canceled every single one of his meetings the next day, to stay with her and make sure she felt safe and cared for, who had helped her process the trauma of being attacked by talking through her fears and validating her feelings, and never once minimizing what she had experienced. A man who looked at her with such fierce devotion and protective love that she could not doubt how much she meant to him, how central she had become to his life and his happiness. A man who was capable of extreme violence but who had never once directed that violence toward her, who was gentle with her in ways that seemed impossible for someone with so much blood on his hands. The internal conflict Zara felt in those days following the attack was intense and exhausting. Part of her was terrified by what she had witnessed, by the stark reminder of the violence that was fundamental to Luca's world, by the knowledge that loving him meant accepting that he killed people, that he ordered deaths, that he operated outside the laws that governed normal society. That part of her wanted to run, to take the money she had earned and disappear, to go back to a life that was safe and predictable even if it was also lonely and financially struggling. But another part of her, a part that had grown stronger over the months of being with Luca, recognized something important. She was not the same person who had crashed into his Lamborghini a year ago. That Zara had been scared of everything, had played it safe, had built walls around herself so high that no one could get close enough to hurt her. This Zara, the one who had emerged from months in Luca's world, was braver and stronger and more confident. She had learned that safety was sometimes an illusion, that taking risks could lead to rewards beyond imagination, that love was worth fighting for even when it was complicated and dangerous. She had learned that she could handle difficult situations, that she was resilient enough to survive trauma, that she did not need to hide from life to protect herself from pain, and she had learned that Luca, for all his darkness and violence, treated her with more respect and devotion than any supposedly good man she had dated before him. He listened to her opinions and valued her input. He supported her career and celebrated her successes. He never tried to control her or diminish her or make her feel small. He protected her fiercely but never suffocated her independence. He was dangerous to his enemies but gentle with her, ruthless in business but tender in their private moments. The contradiction should have been impossible, but somehow Luca contained both realities, and Zara found herself loving both aspects of who he was. "I am sorry you had to see that side of my world," Luca said as they lay together in his bed the morning after the war ended. "I am sorry you had to feel afraid because of me. I was not afraid because of you. I was afraid because people hate you enough to hurt me to get to you. But you kept me safe. Your people kept me safe." Zara turned to face him. "I know what you are, Luca. I know what you are capable of. I am not naive about your world anymore, but I also know who you are with me, how you treat me, how you value me. And that matters more than what you do outside. This room, you are far braver than I gave you credit for when you crashed into my car, or far more foolish. Still not sure which." Luca kissed her forehead. "I love you. I did not plan to. I did not want to, because love is vulnerability in my world. But I cannot help it. You have become everything to me. I love you too. Against all logic and common sense, I love you." They made love slowly, tenderly, confirming with their bodies what they had admitted with words. And Zara thought about how a moment of distraction, a car crash that had seemed like the worst thing that could happen, had actually been the catalyst for finding a love she had never imagined possible. The remaining 6 months of their original agreement passed quickly. Zara completed the rebranding of all Luca's legitimate businesses, creating a cohesive visual identity that made his family's operations look professional and modern and successful. Her work was featured in design publications, attracting high-end clients who wanted similar transformations. Her reputation grew to the point where she could charge premium rates and be selective about projects, but she chose to continue working with Luca, not because of their agreement but because she genuinely enjoyed the work and loved being part of his world. Their relationship became common knowledge in both legitimate society and criminal circles. Zara Mitchell was Luca Santoro's woman, and that designation brought both privileges and dangers. She was respected by his associates, protected by his organization, treated as an extension of his power and influence. But she also lived with constant security, constant awareness of threats, constant knowledge that being with him made her a permanent target. 1 year after the car crash that started everything, Luca took Zara back to the spot on the FDR drive where they had met. He had arranged for the highway to be closed for 30 minutes, using influence and money to create a private moment in the middle of New York City. 1 year ago, you crashed into my car and changed both our lives, Luca said as they stood by the side of the road where her Honda had smashed into his Lamborghini. You have given me something I never thought I would have. Love that is real, not strategic. Partnership that is genuine, not transactional. Hope that I can be more than just what my family made me. He got down on one knee, pulling a ring box from his pocket, and Zara felt her heart stop. Marry me. Not because of debt or agreements or protection. Marry me because you love me and I love you, and because I want to spend the rest of my life proving that crashing into me was the best accident that ever happened to both of us. Zara looked at the ring, a stunning diamond that caught the city lights, and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The fear and danger, the passion and protection, the transformation of her life from struggling designer to successful businesswoman and partner to a powerful man. The complications and joy of loving someone whose world was dark, but whose treatment of her was devoted. Yes, she said, pulling him to his feet and kissing him. Yes, I will marry you. Because you are right. Crashing into you was the worst thing and the best thing that ever happened to me. They married 6 months later in a private ceremony at Giuliana's family estate in upstate New York, surrounded by Luca's family and the small circle of friends that Zara had maintained despite her new life. Sophia was her maid of honor. Tony, who had saved her life during the kidnapping attempt, gave her away since her own father had passed years before. And as Zara stood in front of Luca, speaking vows that promised forever, she thought about the bizarre journey that had brought her to this moment. She had crashed into a Lamborghini and thought her life was over. Instead, she had crashed into a love that transformed everything. She had feared the debt would destroy her. Instead, it had built her into someone stronger, more confident, more capable than she had ever been. She had worried about being trapped by a mafia boss. Instead, she had found freedom in being chosen by a man who valued her completely. I love you, Luca said as they kissed to seal their vows. My beautiful disaster, my perfect accident, my wife. I love you too, Zara replied. My dangerous savior, my unlikely partner, my husband. And she meant it, every word. That is the story of Zara Mitchell and Luca Santoro, proof that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doorways to the best chapters, that love can bloom in the most unlikely circumstances, and that the person you crash into might be exactly the person you were meant to find. Their story reminds us that accidents can be fate in disguise, that protection can look like control until you see the devotion beneath it, and that sometimes owing someone a debt gives them the chance to give you everything you never knew you needed. If this story moved you, and you want to hear more tales of dangerous romance, unlikely protection, and love that transforms lives, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We share new stories every week about real people who discovered that the most extraordinary relationships often begin in the most chaotic circumstances. What did you think of Zara and Luca's story? Have you ever had an accident or mistake that led to something wonderful? Would you have agreed to work for him? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing how these stories resonate with your own experiences of unexpected beginnings and dangerous love. Remember, sometimes the crash is not the end of the story but the beginning of everything. And sometimes the person demanding payment for damages gives you something far more valuable than what was destroyed. Thanks for listening, and we will see you in the next story.